The council chamber stretched wide and tall, filled with representatives from 47 different species. Light filtered through the dome above, casting strange shadows on the floor where delegates sat in their assigned sections. The air smelled of different atmospheres mixing together, creating a scent that was neither pleasant nor terrible, just different. Ambassador Dae-sung stood at the speaking platform. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. His dark blue uniform was simple, without the medals and decorations that other ambassadors wore. He held a small data tablet in his hands and waited for the room to quiet down. The Avex Council speaker, Toral, sat in the highest seat. His forearms rested on the chair's armrests, and his reptilian eyes watched Dae-sung with barely hidden amusement. Toral had been the speaker for 20 years. He had seen many species try to negotiate for better terms. He thought this was just another one of those times. The human ambassador may speak, Toral said, his voice echoing through the chamber. Dae-sung nodded once. Thank you, Speaker Toral. I will be brief. He tapped his tablet and a document appeared on every delegate's personal screen. Effective immediately, humanity is withdrawing from all Galactic Council operations. This includes military partnerships, trade agreements, technology sharing programs, and territorial protectorates. The room erupted in noise. Delegates turned to each other, talking loudly. Some laughed. Others looked confused. Toral raised one hand and the room slowly grew quiet again. Ambassador Dae-sung, Toral said, and there was laughter in his voice. Surely you mean to renegotiate terms? This is a standard negotiation tactic. Please tell us what humanity wants. Better trade routes? More seats on the military council? We can discuss these things. Dae-sung's expression did not change. There is nothing to negotiate. The document contains all necessary information about our withdrawal timeline. All human personnel will be removed from council facilities within 48 hours. All human technology currently on loan to the council will be disabled and retrieved. All joint operations will cease. A Vren delegate named Quillnath stood up. She was insectoid, with a hard shell that gleamed under the lights. As a military coordinator, she had worked with human forces for years. This is absurd. You cannot simply leave. We have treaties. We have contracts. All treaties contain withdrawal clauses, Dae-sung replied. We are exercising those clauses. Everything is legal and proper. Another delegate, a gaseous being from the Novarian system, spoke through its translator. But why? Has the council offended humanity in some way? We can address any grievances. Dae-sung was quiet for a moment. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of delegates who had worked with humans for decades. For 163 years, humanity has served the council faithfully. We have asked many times to be treated as equal partners rather than useful assistants. Those requests were denied. We have submitted 847 formal reports warning about overdependence on human systems. Those reports were filed away and ignored. We are not angry. We are simply choosing a different path. Toral waved one hand dismissively. Come now, Dae-sung. Humanity benefits greatly from council membership. Protection from raiders, access to markets, advanced technology sharing. You would throw all of that away? We would, Dae-sung said simply. The decision is final. He placed his tablet on the platform and walked out of the chamber. No one tried to stop him. Behind him, the delegates began talking all at once, their voices rising in disbelief and confusion. In orbit above the council's central station, Admiral Hee-jin stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Horizon. She was younger than Dae-sung, with sharp features and alert eyes. Her uniform was pristine, and her crew moved around her with practiced efficiency. Status report, she said. Her second officer, Commander Tae-yang, checked his display. All civilian personnel have been evacuated. Engineering teams are beginning shutdown procedures on our technology installations. The council is demanding we leave the defensive systems in place. Denied, Hee-jin said. Everything we built we take with us. Disable it if we cannot remove it. Yes, Admiral. Hee-jin watched the main screen, which showed the massive council station. Human-built shield generators surrounded it like a protective shell. Human-designed sensor arrays dotted its surface. Human engineers had rebuilt its power core 3 times over the decades. Soon, all of that would be gone. A communication came through from the council station. It was Quillnath, the Vren military coordinator. Her face appeared on the screen, her compound eyes reflecting concern. Admiral Hee-jin, please reconsider. We have worked together for years. The border defenses need your ships. The border defenses will have to manage without us, Heejin replied. We have filed our withdrawal. It was not a surprise. You have had access to those contingency plans for decades. But no one thought you would actually leave, Quilneth said. This is madness. The Krell raiders are still out there. The border stations are vulnerable. Then I suggest the Council strengthen them. You have 46 other species to draw upon. None of them have your technology. None of them have your tactical systems. Hyjin's expression softened slightly. Coordinator Quilnath, I respect you. We have fought together. But respect must flow both ways. The Council has taken our contributions for granted for too long. Perhaps our absence will teach better appreciation. The communication ended. Quilnath looked frustrated and worried, but there was nothing more to say. Over the next 48 hours, human ships began departing from Council space. It was organized and methodical. Transport vessels carried personnel. Engineering ships carefully removed or disabled human technology. Military vessels formed protective escorts. The Council sent message after message, each one more urgent than the last. They offered better trade terms. They offered seats on the High Council. They offered apologies for past oversights. Every message went unanswered. On the Council station, technicians discovered that many systems were failing. The shield generators would not restart once the humans powered them down. The sensor arrays went dark. The weapons targeting systems displayed error messages in human languages that no one else could read. A young AVEX engineer named Sulth tried to access the defensive grid controls. He had worked alongside human engineers for years, but had never paid attention to how they actually maintained the systems. Now staring at lines of code he could not understand, he realized how much he had taken for granted. Can you fix it? His supervisor asked. I do not know, Sulth admitted. The humans always handled this section. I thought it was simple maintenance work. I never learned the underlying systems. His supervisor's forearms gestured in frustration. Try anyway. We need those shields operational. Sulth tried. He failed. Across the station, other technicians were having the same experience. Systems that had run smoothly for decades were now incomprehensible, without human expertise. In the Council chamber, Toril received reports from various stations and outposts. Everywhere, the same story repeated. Human departure meant system failures, operational gaps, missing expertise. He had not realized how deeply humanity had woven itself into Council infrastructure. Send another message to the human ambassador, Toril ordered. Offer them whatever they want. Double their previous trade allocations. Give them 3 seats on the High Council. The communication officer tried. The message was delivered, but no response came back. Far from Council space, the human fleet gathered at the edge of their own territory. Admiral Hyjin stood on her bridge and watched as the last ships arrived. Hundreds of vessels, from massive carriers to small patrol craft, all returning home. All ships accounted for, Commander Tae-Yang reported. 0 casualties. Full withdrawal complete. Hyjin nodded slowly. She felt no triumph, no anger, only a quiet sense of necessity. For too long, humanity had been the foundation that held the Council together, while receiving little recognition. Now the Council would learn what that foundation had been supporting. Set course for Earth, she said, and monitor all Council communications. Do not respond but listen. They will learn soon enough. The fleet turned and began the journey home, leaving the Council to face a future they had never prepared for. A future without the humans they had always taken for granted. 3 weeks had passed since the humans left. The Council had scrambled to fill the gaps, assigning new personnel to abandoned posts and trying to restart the systems that humans had maintained. Progress was slow and frustrating, but Toril told himself it was manageable. Then the Krell came. The Krell swarm was a nomadic species that lived in massive ship clusters. They did not build civilizations or farm planets. They simply took what they needed and moved on. For decades, Council forces had kept them away from civilized space. The Krell would probe the borders, test the defenses, and retreat when met with strong resistance. This time was different. Captain Sung Ho commanded the surveillance ship Silent Witness, positioned just outside Council territory. His ship was small and fast, designed to observe without being detected. The crew was minimal, just 15 people, all specialists in intelligence gathering. Captain, we are picking up Krell signatures at the outer rim, reported his sensor officer, a young woman named Bora. Multiple clusters. They are moving toward Council border station Theta 9. Sung-ho studied the display. Red dots appeared on the screen, each one representing a Krell ship. There were more than usual. How many? 47 vessels in the first wave. More appearing behind them. That was 3 times the normal raiding party size. Sung-ho frowned. Are they attacking? Yes, sir. Station Theta 9 is engaging now. The silent witness was too far to see the battle directly, but their sensors picked up everything. Energy weapons firing, shields absorbing impacts, ships maneuvering for position. It should have been a routine skirmish. It was not routine. Bora's voice carried a note of surprise. Sir, the station's shields are failing. They are down to 40% and still dropping. Already? Sung-ho leaned forward. That is too fast. Those shields should hold for hours against a force that size. I know, sir. But the readings do not lie. Shield failure is accelerating. They watched in silence as the battle unfolded. The Council ships fought back, launching missiles and firing beam weapons. They destroyed several Krell vessels, but their defensive formations were sloppy. Their targeting less accurate than it should have been. And the shields, those critical defensive barriers, kept weakening. Within 30 minutes, Station Theta 9 sent out a distress call. Should we respond? Asked Bora. No, Sung-ho said quietly. We have our orders. Observe only. Do not engage. Do not assist. He hated saying it, but orders were clear. Earth was no longer part of the Council's problems. They would watch and learn, but they would not intervene. The station fell 2 hours later. The Krell ships swarmed over it, stripping it for resources before moving deeper into Council territory. On the Council's central world, Military Coordinator Quillnath received the news with disbelief. She stood in the command center, surrounded by displays showing force deployments and defensive positions. Other military officers from various species worked at their stations, but the mood was tense. How did we lose Theta 9? She demanded. That station was designed to hold against forces twice that size. A Vren technician pulled up diagnostic data. The shield harmonics were not synchronized properly. The generators were operating independently instead of in coordinated fashion. This created weak points that the Krell exploited. Why were they not synchronized? We have the procedures. The technician looked uncomfortable. The synchronization was handled by human engineers. They used a specialized algorithm that adjusted the shields in real time based on incoming weapon signatures. We have the base code but not the adjustment parameters. Without those, the shields operate at roughly 60% efficiency. Quillnath felt something cold settle in her stomach. 60%? Yes, Coordinator. She looked at the defensive grid map. Dozens of stations lined the border, all using the same shield system. All with the same vulnerability. How many stations are affected? All of them. The cold feeling spread. Quillnath had worked with human military personnel for years. She had watched them maintain systems, run diagnostics, coordinate defenses. She had assumed it was routine work, the kind of background tasks that any competent engineer could handle. She had never realized that those routine tasks were the difference between a shield that held and a shield that failed. Over the next week, the Krell attacked 3 more stations. They seemed to sense weakness, pressing harder than they ever had before. Each station fell faster than the one before. Council forces fought bravely, but bravery could not compensate for failing technology. Back on Earth, in a quiet office in Geneva, Ji-won sat at her desk reviewing casualty reports. She had been the primary military liaison between Earth and the Council for 15 years. She knew every station, every defensive position, every tactical plan. She had written many of those plans herself. Now she watched them fall apart. Her assistant, a young man named Hyun-woo, entered with another datapad. The latest update from Silent Witness. Station Delta 7 is under attack. They are requesting emergency assistance from any nearby vessels. Are there any Council ships in range? Ji-won asked. Yes, but they are having navigation difficulties. The jump calculations are taking 3 times longer than normal. Ji-won closed her eyes. Jump calculations, another system that humans had optimized. The Council had the basic technology, had used it for centuries before humans arrived. But human mathematicians had refined it, creating algorithms that calculated faster and more accurately. Without those algorithms, jump times increased significantly. What about the Council fleet at Sector 8? She asked. Also delayed. Their tactical coordination network is experiencing errors. Ship-to-ship communication is functional, but the automated battle management system keeps crashing. Another human system. Another gap in capability. G1 had written 17 different reports warning about this exact scenario. She had explained in careful detail how dependent the Council had become on human innovation. Every report had been acknowledged and filed away. Do we respond to their assistance request? Hyunwoo asked. No, we observe only. Hyunwoo hesitated. Ma'am, people are dying. I know, G1 said softly. But we warned them. For decades, we warned them. They chose not to listen. They chose to take our work for granted. Now they face the consequences of that choice. She meant it, but the words still tasted bitter. G1 was not a cruel person. She did not enjoy watching others suffer. But she also understood that some lessons could only be learned through experience. Station Delta 7 fell before Council reinforcements could arrive. Across Council space, other problems began emerging. Medical facilities reported that their diagnostic synthesizers were malfunctioning. These machines analyzed patient symptoms and recommended treatments. Human doctors had spent years programming them with data from thousands of different species. Without regular updates and maintenance from those doctors, the machines began making errors. Small errors at first, but errors nonetheless. Communication relays started having synchronization issues. Messages arrived late or not at all. Trade ships found themselves waiting hours for docking clearance because automated traffic control systems were struggling without human oversight. Power grids on several planets experienced fluctuations. The generators still worked, but the smart distribution networks that balance load across entire continents were behaving erratically. Human engineers had designed those networks to adapt to changing conditions. Without them, the adaptation stopped and efficiency dropped. None of these problems were catastrophic by themselves, but together, they created a cascade of small failures that disrupted daily life across Council space. Things that had always worked smoothly now required constant attention and manual intervention. In the Council chamber, Toril met with his senior advisors. The mood was grim. We need the humans back, said one advisor, a Novarian named Alara. Every day they are gone, our situation worsens. They will not respond to our messages, Toril replied. His forearms gestured in frustration. I have offered them everything. Better terms, Council seats, formal apologies. They ignore every communication. Perhaps we should send an envoy directly to Earth, suggested another advisor. And say what? We are sorry for taking you for granted? We need you to come back and fix everything? Yes, Alara said bluntly. Because that is the truth. Toril was silent. Pride warred with practicality. The Avex were a proud species. They had been part of the Council leadership for centuries. Admitting such complete dependence on another species was humiliating. But the casualty reports kept coming. Stations kept falling. Systems kept failing. Far away, aboard the Silent Witness, Captain Sung-ho watched another Krell attack unfold. This time the Council ships fought better, having adjusted some of their tactics. But it was not enough. The fundamental problems remained. How long can they hold? Asked Bora. Sung-ho studied the tactical display. Without our systems, not long. The Krell are learning. They understand now that the Council is weaker than before. They will keep pressing. Should we warn Earth? Earth already knows. They are watching just as we are. Bora was quiet for a moment. Do you think we will go back? Eventually? Sung-ho considered the question. Perhaps, but not as we were before, not as assistants and support personnel. If we return, it will be as equals or not at all. The battle continued below them, and the Silent Witness maintained its silent vigil, watching as the first cracks in the Council's foundation widened into something that could not be easily repaired. 2 months had passed since humanity withdrew from the Council. What began as isolated problems had grown into a crisis that touched every aspect of Council civilization. The carefully balanced systems that governed galactic society were failing, one after another, like dominoes falling in slow motion. Minseo stood in her apartment on Earth, looking out at the city lights of Seoul. She had been the chief engineer of Council infrastructure for 12 years. She knew every power grid, every communication relay, every life support system across 24 Council worlds. She had maintained them, improved them, and watched them grow more complex and more dependent on human expertise. Her communication terminal beeped constantly with messages. Pleas from former colleagues. Desperate requests from Council officials. Offers of money, titles, anything she wanted if she would just come back and fix things. She ignored them all. Her younger brother Jamin entered the room carrying 2 cups of tea. He was a civilian, a teacher who had never worked with the council. "Another 100 messages today," he said, handing her a cup. 347, Minseo corrected. "I stopped reading them after the first 50. Do you feel guilty?" Minseo considered the question honestly. "Sometimes. But then I remember how many times I warned them. How many reports I filed explaining that their systems needed redundancy, needed to be maintained by their own people. They nodded and smiled and did nothing. What is happening there now? Everything is breaking down," Minseo said quietly. "The quantum communication relays are the worst. They require precise calibration every 72 hours. Without it, they drift out of synchronization. Right now, I estimate 60% of council worlds cannot communicate with each other in real time." Jamin looked shocked. 60%? At least. It gets worse every day. The relays were designed by a human team 20 years ago. Only humans maintained them. The council engineers learned how to use them, but not how to maintain them. She pulled up a holographic display showing the council communication network. Red dots marked failed relays. Yellow dots showed relays that were degrading. Only a few green dots remained, and those were fading toward yellow. Without communication, they cannot coordinate defense, cannot manage trade, cannot govern effectively. Their entire civilization was built on instant communication across light years. Now they are back to slower-than-light message drones for most routes. Jamin shook his head in disbelief. And they never thought to learn how to maintain these themselves? They thought they had time. They thought we would always be there. Across the galaxy, the situation was indeed worse than Minseo knew. On the Vren homeworld, Military Coordinator Quilnath sat in an emergency council meeting. The room was filled with military leaders from various species, all looking exhausted and worried. "The Krell swarm has taken 8 border stations," Quilnath reported. "They are now pressing toward inhabited systems. We have forces in position to defend, but coordination is difficult without proper communication." "What about the defensive satellites around our core worlds?" asked a Vren general. "Those should be sufficient to repel raiders. The satellites are operational, but the targeting systems are experiencing errors. Human programmers designed the threat assessment algorithms. Without regular updates, the systems cannot properly distinguish between friendly and hostile vessels in complex scenarios." Another general spoke up. "Can we not simply operate them manually?" "We are trying, but manual targeting is far less effective. We estimate our defensive efficiency has dropped to approximately 40% of previous capability." The room fell silent. A 40% effectiveness meant worlds that should have been impregnable were now vulnerable. "We must reach out to the humans again," one general insisted. "Offer them military command positions. Give them whatever they want." Quilnath had already tried that. She had sent personal messages to human officers she had worked with for years, people she considered friends. Not one had responded. The silence hurt more than any angry reply would have. On the Novarian home system, Counselor Ilara was dealing with a different kind of crisis. She floated in her specialized chamber, her gaseous form shifting colors with agitation as she reviewed medical reports. The medical synthesizers were failing across council space. These machines were miracles of technology, capable of diagnosing illnesses across thousands of different species and recommending precise treatments. Human medical researchers had spent decades programming them with comprehensive biological data. News of the Terran Compact spread quickly through the former Council territories. Some species applied immediately for membership, others watched cautiously. The Avex and Vren, still trying to maintain their old authority, denounced it as a human power grab. But the Compact moved forward regardless. A new charter was written with input from all founding members. A rotating leadership council was established, with the first chair being Ilara from Novaria, not a human. Military forces were integrated under a unified command structure led by Admiral Hayajin, but with clear oversight from civilian leadership. Most importantly, human experts began sharing knowledge freely with Compact members. Engineers taught others how to maintain the communication relays. Doctors trained multi-species medical teams. Military officers conducted joint training exercises, showing rather than just doing. It was slow work. The other species were starting from far behind, struggling to catch up after decades of dependency. But they were learning, and humans were teaching patiently. The Krell swarm made the mistake of testing the compact's defenses 3 months after its formation. They attacked a Kelver colony world, expecting the weak resistance they had encountered from former Council forces. Instead, they faced a coordinated defense. Human ships fought alongside Novarian vessels and Dreenax platforms. The tactical coordination was seamless. The technology was shared. When Kelvar shields weakened, human engineers rerouted power from nearby ships to compensate. When human vessels took damage, Novarian repair teams assisted. The Krell attack was repelled with minimal casualties. The raiders who survived fled, and word spread among the swarm. The compact was not the Council. These beings actually fought together. After that demonstration, 3 more species applied for compact membership. Each application was carefully reviewed. Not all were accepted. Some species still carried the old Council attitude of entitlement. They wanted protection without contribution, benefits without responsibility. Those applications were denied. The compact accepted only species that demonstrated genuine commitment to the founding principles. By the end of the first year, membership had grown to 8 species. It was far smaller than the old Council's 47 members, but it was stronger, more unified, and more resilient. In the Council's former territories, the 7 fragmentary governments continued to struggle. The Avex and Vren attempted to maintain order, but their authority was fading. Smaller conflicts erupted as species fought over resources and territory. Some systems descended into chaos. Toral, still nominally the speaker of one Council fragment, sent a final message to Earth. It was not a request for aid or an offer of terms. It was simply a statement. We understand now what we lost. Not your technology or your military. We lost partners who tried to help us become better. That loss cannot be recovered by begging. It must be earned through change. Perhaps someday our children will be worthy of standing beside yours. The message was acknowledged but not answered. Some wounds required time to heal. On Earth, in Admiral Hyjin's office, she stood looking at a star map showing compact territory. It was still small compared to what the old Council had controlled, but it was growing steadily. More importantly, it was healthy. The species within it were learning to rely on each other rather than on one dominant partner. Her first officer, Commander Taeyang, entered with a report. Admiral, the joint training exercise with Dreenax forces has completed. Their performance has improved by 43% compared to last month. Good. What about the Novarian engineering teams? They successfully performed unassisted maintenance on the quantum relay in Sector 7. No human supervision required. Hyjin smiled. That was real progress. Excellent. Continue the training rotations. She looked back at the star map. There were still threats out there. The Krell swarm remained dangerous. Unknown species lurked in unexplored space. The fractured Council territories were unstable and could explode into wider conflict at any time. But for the first time in her career, Hyjin felt like humanity was not carrying the weight alone. They had partners, real partners who understood that strength came from unity built on respect, not on dependency. Far from Earth, on a remote compact outpost, Captain Sung-Ho of the Silent Witness stood on the observation deck with a Novarian officer named Fel. They watched ships from 4 different species conducting patrol operations together. It is different now, Fel said. When I served in the Council forces, I always felt like we were pretending to be capable. Now, working with your people as teachers rather than servants, I feel like we are actually becoming capable. Sung-Ho nodded. That was always the hope. Not that you needed us forever, but that you would learn to stand on your own. Will humanity ever forgive the Council for how they treated you? The Council does not exist anymore, Sung-Ho replied. And forgiveness is not really the question. What matters is whether we can build something better going forward. He gestured to the ships outside. This is better. Not perfect, but better. Fel's form flickered with what Sung-Ho had learned to recognize as agreement. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the new order take shape among the stars. On Earth, Prime Minister Sunwoo prepared to address the Planetary Assembly. His speech would outline humanity's progress over the past year and set goals for the future. But before the official remarks, he would say something personal. We did not leave the Council to punish them, he would say. We left because we needed to respect ourselves. We could not keep giving everything while being valued for nothing. Sometimes walking away is not abandonment. It is self-preservation. It is dignity. What happened to the council was tragic but necessary. They built their entire civilization on our backs and told themselves they were carrying us. That could not continue. Now we are building something new, something where partnership means partnership, where contribution is recognized, where no one species bears all the weight while others take all the glory. We walk together with those who respect us, or we walk alone with our dignity intact. There is no third option. There never was. Ambassador Dae-sung, watching the speech from his garden, thought about his final words to Toral all those months ago. The council had believed humanity would come running back at the first sign of trouble. They had been wrong. Humanity had quietly retreated, watching the council crumble not with joy but with the cold awareness that some lessons could only be learned through suffering. And now from the ruins of arrogance and dependency, something better was emerging. It was not perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was built on truth instead of illusion, on respect instead of assumption, on partnership instead of exploitation, and that made all the difference. Now that database was becoming outdated. New diseases emerged. Species evolved. Medical knowledge advanced. But without human researchers to update the systems, the synthesizers were working with increasingly old information. Alara read report after report of misdiagnoses, incorrect treatments, preventable deaths. The numbers were still small, but they were growing. In another few months, the medical infrastructure would be dangerously unreliable. She had tried to assign council medical staff to update the systems. They tried their best, but the complexity was overwhelming. The human medical team had included specialists in xenobiology, quantum chemistry, neural networks, and a dozen other fields. Replacing that expertise with untrained personnel was impossible. Alara accessed the council archives, searching for the warnings that Ambassador Dae-sung had mentioned. She found them easily. Hundreds of documents carefully written, explaining the risks of overdependence on human systems. Each one had been received, acknowledged, and filed away without action. She read one report from 8 years ago, written by Minseo. It outlined exactly this scenario, describing how the communication relays would fail without proper maintenance. The report included recommendations for training council engineers to take over maintenance duties. It had been marked as low priority and forgotten. Another report from 10 years ago, written by a human medical doctor named Young-soo. It warned that the medical synthesizers needed constant updates and recommended establishing a multi-species research team. That report had been acknowledged but never acted upon. Report after report, warning after warning, all ignored. Alara felt something she had rarely experienced in her long life. Shame. The humans had tried to help them avoid this disaster. The council had been too arrogant to listen. Meanwhile, the problems continued to multiply. Food distribution networks were failing on several heavily populated worlds. These networks used complex algorithms to predict demand, manage supply chains, and optimize delivery routes. Human logisticians had designed them to handle the unique challenges of feeding billions across multiple climates and species requirements. Without those logisticians, the systems operated on outdated assumptions. Predictions were wrong. Supplies arrived late or not at all. Warehouses on some worlds overflowed while others faced shortages. Famine had not arrived yet, but it was coming. Power grids continued their decline. On 3 industrial worlds, factories were forced to reduce operations because the power supply was too unstable for delicate manufacturing processes. Thousands of workers faced unemployment. Transportation systems struggled. Automated traffic control for space lanes around major worlds kept having errors. Ships waited in long queues for manual routing. Trade slowed. Costs increased. Each problem by itself was manageable, but together they created a society that was slowly grinding to a halt. The smooth efficiency that council citizens had taken for granted for decades was disappearing, replaced by delays, errors, and failures. The Krell swarm sensed the weakness and pushed harder. They had taken 8 border stations. Now they attacked 9 more simultaneously, spreading council forces thin. Without proper communication and coordination, the council could not respond effectively. More stations fell. In the council chamber, Toral met with his advisors in an emergency session. His forearms trembled slightly with stress. He had not slept properly in days. "We must acknowledge reality," Alara said firmly. "We cannot function without human expertise. We need them back." "They will not respond to our offers," Toral replied. "What more can we give them?" "Perhaps that is the wrong question. suggested another advisor, a young Avex named Korath. Perhaps we should not be asking what we can give them, but rather what we did wrong. Toral looked at him sharply. What do you mean? I have been reviewing the archives. The humans filed hundreds of warnings about our dependence on their systems. We ignored all of them. We treated them as valuable assistants rather than essential partners. We took credit for successes that were largely their achievement. Korath pulled up military records, displaying them for all to see. Look at the Battle of Kronos Ridge. The Council claimed a great victory, but these records show that human forces did 73% of the actual combat. Our forces provided support and took the public recognition. He showed more records. The defense of Sarlacc Station. The Council Admiral received medals and honors. The human tactical officer who designed the defensive strategy was mentioned in a footnote. Record after record, the same pattern. Humans doing the critical work while Council officers received the glory. We did not just ignore their warnings, Korath said quietly. We built our entire civilization on their backs and pretended we were carrying ourselves. The room was silent. The truth was uncomfortable, but it could no longer be denied. On Earth, Minister of Foreign Affairs Byung-woo received a personal message from Toral. It was different from the previous communications. No offers of trade or titles, just a simple request for a meeting to discuss mutual understanding. Byung-woo read it carefully. Then he archived it without responding. The Council needed to understand that humanity would not come running back just because they finally admitted they needed help. Real change required more than acknowledgement. It required action and proof. Min Seo turned off her communication terminal and finished her tea. Outside her window, Earth cities glowed peacefully. Above them, human ships patrolled Earth space, protecting a world that had chosen independence over exploitation. Somewhere in Council space, systems continued to fail, and the Krell swarm continued to advance. The cascade was accelerating, and the Council was learning a hard lesson about the difference between partnership and dependence. 4 months after the human withdrawal, the Krell swarm reached the core worlds of the Galactic Council. The border defenses had collapsed completely. 8 Council species had lost colonies. Trade between worlds had fallen by 70%. Communication networks were barely functional. The carefully built civilization was coming apart. Captain Jae-hoon commanded the intelligence station Watchpost 7, hidden in a debris field at the edge of Council space. His team of analysts monitored everything happening in Council territory. They watched governments struggle. They watched economies collapse. They watched the Krell advance system by system. Sir, we are picking up multiple distress signals from the Avex home system, reported Lieutenant Minna. The Krell have surrounded the 3rd and 5th planets. Council forces are engaging, but they are outnumbered. Jae-hoon studied the tactical display. Red markers showed Krell vessels, hundreds of them, forming a siege around 2 heavily populated worlds. Blue markers showed Council defense forces, scattered and disorganized. What about reinforcements? He asked. 3 fleets are trying to reach the system, but they are having trouble coordinating their jump sequences. 2 fleets almost collided when they arrived at the same coordinates. They are reorganizing now. Jump coordination, another system that humans had optimized. Council forces had been using human-designed fleet management software for so long that they never developed proper coordination protocols of their own. Now, trying to move large numbers of ships together, they struggled with basics that should have been simple. Jae-hoon watched the battle unfold. Council ships fought bravely, but bravery was not enough. Their formations were poor. Their targeting was inefficient. Their shields failed at critical moments. Everything that humans had quietly handled for decades was now absent, and the difference was devastating. Should we send a report to Earth Command? Asked Minna. They are already receiving the same data we are, Jae-hoon replied. Continue monitoring. On the Avex homeworld, Toral stood in the central command center, watching his civilization's military struggle against an enemy they should have been able to defeat easily. Around him, military officers shouted orders, trying to coordinate a defense that was falling apart in real time. Second Fleet cannot establish firing solutions, one officer reported. The targeting computers keep resetting. Third Fleet is requesting manual override codes for their defensive grid, another said. Fourth Fleet lost 3 ships to friendly fire. The identification systems are not recognizing Allied vessels. Toral listened to the chaos and felt a deep, hollow despair. Everything was failing. Not because the technology was broken, but because no one knew how to use it properly without human support. A junior counselor named Vess approached him. She was young, barely 30 cycles old, and had only recently been appointed to her position. "Speaker Toral, I need to show you something." "Not now," Toral said, his eyes on the battle display. "It is important, please." Something in her voice made him turn. Vess looked pale and frightened. Toral followed her to a quiet corner where she pulled up classified military records. "I was reviewing our military history," Vess explained, "trying to understand how we could have become so dependent on human forces. I found something disturbing." She showed him battle records from the past 50 years. Not the public records, but the detailed tactical logs that only high-level officers could access. Toral read them with growing horror. Every major battle, every significant victory, the records showed the same pattern. Human forces engaged the primary enemy forces. Human tactical officers directed the overall strategy. Human ships took the highest casualties. Meanwhile, Council forces provided support, handled secondary objectives, and then took credit for the victories. This battle at Kronos Ridge, Vess pointed to one record. The public reports say Admiral Corvin led a brilliant defense, but the actual records show that human Captain Li Wan commanded the battle from start to finish. Corvin followed her orders and then gave the victory speech. The defense of the Sarlacc sector. Council forces received medals and honors, but 78% of enemy ships were destroyed by human vessels. The suppression of the Borean pirates, a human operation from beginning to end, credited to Council peacekeepers. Record after record, decade after decade. The truth was undeniable. The Council military had been mostly ceremonial. Humans had done the real fighting while Council officers wore the medals and accepted the glory. Toral felt sick. "How did I not know this?" "Because no one wanted to know," Vess said quietly. The humans did not boast about their achievements. They filed their reports properly and let us take the recognition. We were happy to accept it. A communication officer interrupted them. "Speaker Toral, the third planet's orbital defenses are failing. The Krell will reach the surface within hours." Toral looked at the main display. The third planet of the Avex system held 2 billion people. If it fell, the casualties would be catastrophic. "Send another message to Earth. Tell them we need immediate military assistance. Offer them full command of all Council forces." "Sir, they have not responded to any of our previous messages." "Send it anyway." The message was sent. Like all the others, it went unanswered. Across Council space, other species were reaching similar realizations. The Vren military discovered that their elite forces had never actually led a major engagement. The Novarians found that their celebrated defensive victories had been won by human tactical planning. The Drenax learned that their legendary fleet commanders had been following human-designed strategies. The Council was not a military alliance of equals. It was a protective organization run by humans, with other species serving as support personnel who thought they were in charge. Member species began turning on each other. The Vren blamed the Avex for poor leadership. The Avex blamed the Novarians for inadequate resources. The Novarians blamed everyone else. Trust collapsed. Several species began secret negotiations with the Krell, offering tribute in exchange for being left alone. The unity that had held the Council together for centuries dissolved. On Earth, Admiral Hyojin stood in Earth Defense Command watching the same reports that Jae-hoon was sending. The command center was quiet and efficient, a stark contrast to the chaos in Council territory. "The Avex homeworld will fall within 24 hours, reported her tactical officer. "After that, the Krell will have access to the core manufacturing systems. They will be able to sustain a much larger fleet." "And the Council response?" Hyojin asked. "Disorganized. Several species are withdrawing forces to defend their own worlds. The unified defense is collapsing." Hyojin pulled up a communication from Earth's Prime Minister Sun Woo. It contained a single word: proceed. She turned to her command staff. "Prepare the 7th Fleet for deployment. Full combat loadout. We are sending a message." "What kind of message, Admiral?" "The kind that cannot be misunderstood." 6 hours later, the 7th Fleet emerged from jump space at the edge of the Krell Swarm's formation. 50 human vessels, not the hundreds that would be needed for a full engagement, but enough for what Hyejin had planned. The Krell detected them immediately and began forming attack formations. They had been fighting Council forces for months and had learned to exploit their weaknesses. They expected an easy victory. They were wrong. The human fleet moved with precision that the Krell had never seen from Council forces. Perfect formations, instant communication, flawless coordination. The 7th Fleet split into 5 groups, each one targeting a different section of the Krell formation. Human weapons fired with devastating accuracy. Advanced targeting systems that had never been shared with the Council locked onto Krell vessels with perfect precision. Shields operated at full efficiency, synchronized in ways the Council had never managed. Electronic warfare systems blinded Krell sensors and disrupted their communications. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, an entire Krell command cluster was destroyed. 43 enemy vessels reduced to debris. The human fleet had taken minor damage to 3 ships and 0 casualties. Then, as quickly as they arrived, the human ships jumped away. They did not stay to help defend the Avex homeworld. They did not offer assistance to Council forces. They simply demonstrated their capability and left. The message was clear. Humanity could stop the Krell anytime they chose to. They were choosing not to. In the Council Command Center, Terral watched the recorded footage of the human attack. The efficiency, the power, the technology that far exceeded anything the Council possessed. He realized that humanity had been holding back for decades, using only enough force to keep the peace while hiding their true capabilities. "Why?" he whispered. "Why did they hide this?" Vess stood beside him. "Perhaps because they were trying to let us stand on our own. Perhaps they hoped we would eventually become real partners instead of dependents. And instead we took credit for their work and treated them as assistants." "Yes." Toril sat down heavily, all 4 arms hanging limply. Around him, the command center continued its frantic work, trying to save a world that was probably already lost. "Send one more message to Earth, no offers this time. Just an apology. Tell them we understand now. Tell them we were wrong." The message was sent. This time there was a response. It came from Minister Byung-woo and contained only 3 sentences. "Your apology is acknowledged. We will not intervene in your conflict. What happens next is your responsibility." The 3rd planet of the Avex system fell 2 hours later. The Krell landed occupation forces and began strip mining resources. 2 billion people either fled or submitted to Krell control. The Council had learned the truth. They were not mighty. They were not strong. They were children who had been protected by patient guardians. Now the guardians were gone, and the children faced a hostile universe they were not prepared for. On Earth, Admiral Hyejin received reports of the Avex planet's fall. She felt no satisfaction in being right, no pleasure in the Council's suffering. Only a cold awareness that some lessons could only be learned through pain. "What now?" asked her tactical officer. "Now we wait," Hyejin replied. "And we see if they learn the right lesson." 8 months had passed since humanity withdrew from the Galactic Council. The organization that had governed civilized space for 3 centuries no longer existed in any meaningful way. The central government had fractured into 7 separate political entities, each claiming to be the legitimate continuation of the Council. Most species had withdrawn to defend their own territories. Trust had been replaced by suspicion. Unity had been replaced by survival. Prime Minister Sun Woo stood at the window of his office in Geneva, looking out at the city below. Earth had changed in these months. The economy was stronger, freed from the unfavorable trade agreements that had benefited Council species at humanity's expense. The military was openly displaying capabilities that had been hidden for decades. The people walked with more confidence, proud of a government that had finally stood up for their interests. But Sun Woo felt no triumphalism. He understood that what had happened to the Council was a tragedy, even if it was a necessary one. His assistant, a young woman named Su Jin, entered with a data pad. "Sir, we have received formal requests for meetings from 4 separate species. The Novarians, the Dreenax, the Kelvar, and the Sorn. Not the Avex or the Vren. No, sir. They are still attempting to maintain what remains of the original Council structure. They refuse to acknowledge its collapse." Sun Woo nodded slowly. Pride could be useful, but it could also be fatal. What are the other 4 species requesting? They are asking about the possibility of mutual defense agreements. Each one separately, not as a unified group. Terms? They are proposing equal partnerships, shared technology development, joint military command structures. They have sent detailed proposals outlining how decision-making would be distributed fairly. Sunwoo read through the proposals. They were remarkably different from the old council structure, where humanity had provided resources and expertise while having minimal voice in policy decisions. These new proposals acknowledged human contributions and offered genuine equality. Schedule meetings with each delegation, he said, but make it clear these are exploratory discussions only. We are not committing to anything. Yes, sir. After Soo-jin left, Sunwoo pulled up the latest intelligence reports from Captain Jae-hoon's team. The Krell swarm had taken significant territory, but they were not having an easy time holding it. Several former council species were fighting back with renewed determination, having learned hard lessons about defending themselves. Others had collapsed entirely, their populations fleeing as refugees. It was a mess, but from that mess something new might emerge. Something better. Ambassador Dae-sung returned to active duty for the first time since the withdrawal. He had spent the intervening months in quiet retirement, gardening at his home and avoiding all communication from former council colleagues. Now Sunwoo had asked him to represent humanity in what was being called the New Accord. Discussions. The meeting took place on a neutral space station that had once been a council facility, but was now independent. Representatives from the 4 species arrived separately, each one looking nervous and humbled in ways that Dae-sung had never seen during his decades of council service. The Novarian representative, Alara, spoke first. Her gaseous form shifted with what Dae-sung recognized as shame. Ambassador Dae-sung, on behalf of my people, I wish to acknowledge the wrongs done to humanity. We took your contributions for granted. We took credit for your achievements. We ignored your warnings. There is no excuse for this behavior. The Dreenax representative, a crystalline being named Shale, spoke next. We come not to ask for charity or assistance, but to propose genuine partnership. We have reviewed the old council structure and understand now how unbalanced it was. We wish to build something better. The Kelvar representative, a furred mammalian named Tor, added, We know we cannot offer you what you offered us. Our technology is inferior. Our military is weaker. But we can offer honesty, respect, and a commitment to equality. The Sorn representative, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Whisper, finished. We understand if you refuse. We understand that trust must be earned. We are prepared to earn it. Dae-sung listened carefully. He had heard many speeches in his career, most of them filled with empty promises. But these speeches felt different. These beings had experienced the consequences of their arrogance. They had learned what it meant to stand alone against a hostile universe. I will convey your words to my government, Dae-sung said. But I can tell you that humanity is interested in partnership, not in rebuilding the old system. If we move forward, it must be with clear principles. He pulled up a document on the display. First, all members contribute according to their capabilities and benefit according to their needs. No species provides most of the work while others take most of the credit. Second, decision-making is truly shared. One species, one vote, regardless of size or power. Third, technology and knowledge are shared freely among members. No hoarding of advantages. Fourth, military command is rotational and based on merit, not politics. Fifth, any member can withdraw at any time without penalty. The representative studied the principles. Alara spoke hesitantly. These principles would mean giving up significant autonomy. Our species would have to share our most advanced technology. Yes, Dae-sung replied. True partnership requires trust. If you are not ready for that level of trust, then we should not proceed. There was a long silence. Then one by one, each representative indicated acceptance. We will call it the Terran Compact, Dae-sung said. Not the Galactic Council. A new organization with new principles.